I guess spoiler alert, my piece hasn't aired yet, but this might give away some of the plot points. And the doc, for those of you who don't know, is called My First Time. And basically I recorded myself going for my first ever Brazilian wax job. So full exposure on the air. That means all the hair out. And for the piece I got together, obviously, I was the main character, but I also got together a group of girlfriends. I called up my mom in a really awkward conversation because we don't have that kind of close girl talky relationship. And then I also cornered my boyfriend and made him talk to me about his preferences and that kind of stuff. So lots of awkwardness, which is really different for me as a doc maker. I think Steve Wadhams, yeah, there he is in the corner. I did a piece with him a few years back, and Steve was my second set of years on this piece again. But I remember not a fight, but a big discussion about, I basically refused to put myself in the piece as the narrator. I think Steve was like, we just need a little bit of, VO here to connect these two segments. It wasn't my story, and I just was like, it's their story, I don't want to be in it. So I've sort of come full circle. Going from, I guess it wasn't that I hated my voice, I just always felt like if it's not my story to tell, then I'm sort of interfering or intruding on, like why not have the person who the story is all about tell their own story. And then I started to do more pieces for Metro Morning and sort of newsier pieces. And of course, you've only got so much time to sort of speed the narrative along. And, that's sort of the format that they like. So started doing more narration. But this is the first time that I sort of jumped right in to tell my own story. And I guess, people keep asking, why do this piece? Why not get someone else to go for their first Brazilian wax job? And I guess for me, it was something I was curious about doing. It was something that I'd thought about it, so it wasn't sort of like a made up thing to do, an excuse to do a doc, but decided to explore it. And I think that is when inserting yourself in the piece works the best, when it is your story to tell, or alternatively when you have something to add to the story. So you've got a stake in it, or it's part of a scene in terms of creating action, or you're pushing the story forward. I don't think you should do it all the time, obviously, but don't get in the way of the story, I guess. But for this story, it was about me, and one of the benefits of doing it that way is because I wanted sort of the fear and the anxiety and the nervousness to be the thread throughout the piece. And so because I have full access to myself 24/7, I really like the idea of being able to tap into my inner and outer voices. And again, because this was something that I was generally going to be going through the process, I could sort of exploit myself and my first person storytelling. So yeah, and also, in terms of exploiting my emotions, I'm giving full consent, so you're not sort of taking advantage of someone else. And also, I guess, as the main character, in particular, I was looking for, my own emotions to be part of how I was going to build tension through the story, so I could also control my tone a bit in terms of making sure that there was that consistency. And I guess, yeah, that sort of brings me to sort of the two big, maybe ethical is too far, but the two main issues that I grappled with. And one has been mentioned by Mary and Simon a little bit, but the fear of getting too precious about it and being sort of overly self-indulgent and sort of overvaluing yourself as a character. And I guess for me, yes, it was me going for this wax job, but I really saw myself wanting, I guess I wanted to sort of just be the guide of the listener. I wanted the listener to, male or female, see themselves in me and sort of being that representative through the story, as opposed to, hey, look at me, I'm so important and I'm so funny and witty, like let's all talk about me for 8 minutes. But part of the problem is that you walk that line then, as I mentioned, in terms of looking for a specific tone and wanting to sort of, add to the drama of speaking honestly versus, I guess, acting. So throughout the piece, I really wanted to play with that inner-outer voice, and part of it, I did a lot of extra recordings that didn't end up in the doc, but it was like, the waxing things tomorrow, I'm in my closet, right? Like my waxing things tomorrow, and I'm so anxious, and I didn't, I'm really nervous, and I wanted that inner voice to be part of it. But I also knew that what I was looking for in that voice. And so when you go into your closet and are doing your little voiceover, which, isn't scripted, it's just sort of, how you're feeling in the moment, because you're the character, but you're also the producer and the editor, and you know what tape you're after, so I guess I was sort of aware and self-conscious that could also potentially be a bit of a conflict of interest. I like to believe that I was, not overacting or anything, but it was something that I think you need to be aware of when you are your main character. So I just wanted to play a short clip that did not end up in the doc. And to set this up, this was when I was playing around with sort of the Dear Diary style, just sort of, the week before the waxing appointment, sort of doing these little like speaker's corners, I guess, like with myself, and probably ended up overdoing it. Anyway, so we'll play some of that tape, and this is just me in my closet.
So it's tomorrow, and I've had a horrible stress stomach ache for most of the day, and I was trying to pretend that it was maybe like work related or something, and I've now just determined that it's probably the stress of going to do this. I didn't sleep at all last night. I was awake every hour, pretty much on the hour, and that was 2 nights before, so I'm expecting maybe not to have the best sleep tonight. Yeah, I don't know. Do I sound nervous?
What are you doing?
I'm doing my piece.
Why in there?
For sound quality.
Why?
Zach caught me sitting in the closet talking to myself.
Jesus.
Don't judge me. I'm nervous.
Are you freaking out?
I'm freaking out. I'm trying to let it out in my little audio diary here. Okay, now I'm doubly nervous because Zach's sitting outside of the closet, judging me in my nervousness.
So Zach is my boyfriend, now my husband. Tanya will correct me on that. And so I cringed listening to that. There was so much of that tape, and I was just sort of recording everything because, you never know what you're going to need. But it's, I definitely feel like I sort of crossed the line. And like, who cares if I didn't really sleep? Like you sort of just over-exaggerate. And like, I can hear when I'm maybe, reiterating certain things because I'm like, oh, maybe it'll sound good if I sound nervous, but what does nervous sound like? So anyways, that's not in the doc. But again, I did want that to be part of the piece. So this is my second very shorter clip is just a taste of sort of the toned down, more minimalist version of that, of my inner voice that I did end up using. And this is just a very small clip from the very start of the piece.
So I think I'm starting to get nervous. And I think it hit me today. Like, I've been very relaxed and like, oh, this is going to be, not a big deal. And yeah, so deep breaths.
Anyway, so that's me phoning to make the appointment. So again, it's you walk that line, and I think it's just a personal decision. And then just quickly sort of to, I guess the second biggest issue was, of course, that I'm going for a wax job, and there is that risk of maybe getting too personal and too graphic, because basically the doc required me to take off my pants and underwear for the mic. So I don't know if this falls into the category of potentially over-inserting yourself. And this is something that I was asked when I first pitched the piece, and it was turned down the first time. And one of the reasons was because of concerns over sort of the ick factor. But for me, so I repitched it and addressed that. But for me, it was basically the story was about like the listener's discomfort was sort of the point in terms of I'm uncomfortable, the listener's uncomfortable, and it was getting at the deeper idea that we're all doing this. We're all whether you do things with your pubic hair or not, we're all doing it and nobody's talking about it. And for me, it sort of comes back to that idea of shame, and we're all supposed to look a certain way, and the lengths we go to sort of fit within that those stereotypes, and whether or not we want people to know that or not. So for me, that was sort of the objective, and so. I acknowledge that this was a personal, maybe more graphic topic than the average CBC listener is used to. But I think for me, because I had those clear objectives going in, and it was more than just like clickbait, like pubic hair, click on my doc. There was something more to it. So it wasn't a concern. Just because it felt like an honest investigation. And I guess just finally, I was trying to ask myself, like, where would I draw the line? Like, what would be going too far? And I think that as someone who's constantly, like, normally I'm a producer, it's my day job, so I'm always invading other people's privacy and getting them to open up about their, personal stories, no matter what the topic it is. So for me, it sort of feels like, maybe, is that hypocritical for me to draw certain lines around my life? But that said, the one thing I came up with was that I probably would not record myself doing anything sexual. So I will leave it at that. And the doc's going to air this summer, so you can listen to it then.